to get that game because you were on pretty quickly on the sidelines for that. I mean, they had a quick opening and they went down to you. And she thought that was. You know, for me, I'm not positive because for me, I think the biggest one was Texas played Texas A&M, and this has been a long time ago. But every year when they play, when it's at Texas A&M, they build this huge log fire, big jamboree fire, and it would go up stories high. And this year, some young folks died. It crashed and it died. And we were there on site. The president of the school had not spoken to anybody, and it was the network game, and all eyes were on Texas that day because it was a moving story. And I was able to get the president of the school from Texas A&M to come on with us. And to me, that one is probably just as big. It also helped that Mac Brown, who was coaching at Texas at the time, who's now at North Carolina, I know Andre's going to UNC, was a good friend of mine and still is. And he was so gracious at helping us to make some things work that day. And so I'll never forget that. After that year, the next year, the Texas program, somebody had taken a picture of Coach Brown and I and put it in the back of what the old media guides used to be, and it was a great picture. And they sent it to me and he autographed it even. I never knew they were going to put it in their book, but it's one of my favorite pictures that I ever had, and that's a big memory for me. So that's probably where I would go. My wife would go to the Citrus Bowl, but last thing with that, because I got to tell this, one of my interns who wound up working for us, and he lives in the Orlando area, which is where the Citrus Bowl takes place. He said, I got something I got to send you. And I said, what is that? And he goes, I'm not going to tell you. So there's another young lady who's working now, and she was down in that area, and she went by the stadium and had a game there, actually. And she walked in, and there's a big wall of all the people that have done the Citrus Bowl. And her name is Chris Budden. If you see ESPN right now, Chris is on a lot. Chris is one I connect with and have stayed connected with. And Chris takes this picture because my name's up, and she goes, oh my gosh, this was so cool for me. So this other guy who worked for, he does the same thing. I got him almost the same day, and I had no idea it was there. And so that, I hadn't told my wife a whole lot of that. I showed her the picture, but that's pretty cool to be on their wall of the folks who broadcast those games.
Yes, sir. So we've read that you broadcasted in Alabama, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. What were the major differences between the states? The first two stations were CBS affiliates. So at that time, all the affiliates had different ways of getting video and how you were connected, but you had to just meet as many people as you could. And then Asheville was an ABC, and here in Richmond was ABC. So those varied, but I think what we covered. In Alabama, when Auburn and Alabama play football, nothing else in the world matters. I mean, it just is those two. And I got death threats when I was there because somebody'd go, you talk 7 seconds longer about Auburn or Alabama. And I'd go, really? 7 seconds? I mean, you just couldn't believe it, but they were that serious about it. And I knew that one too going in because, like I said, I'd grown up around University of Georgia, so I had a pretty good idea what it was. I just didn't know it was quite that bad, but they were that rapid. They were just, So that was different there. Chattanooga, you were in a smaller area, so there were a lot of Tennessee fans, but you had UT Chattanooga fans. I think here was so great because we had so many schools we could cover and so many different things. And NASCAR came to town. We had golf tournaments come to town. I mean, just all kind of things. So I liked it here. And after we got married and started having children, I was like, okay, we'll look at something that may come along. But there weren't very many jobs I really looked at because I like to be in here. This became home. So that's pretty much. Does that help you on that one? Now I kind of went around my foot on that one. You mentioned the different sports that came around. Did you broadcast anything other than football?
Yep.
And if so, what was your favorite sport to
I
broadcast?
did basketball too. We televised the State Open golf tournament for years. I did senior tennis. Now that was a hoot because folks like John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors were hilarious in real life. We had a tournament that John McEnroe won in Raleigh. And if you get to know McEnroe, he's really a good guy. At that time, there was talk, he was a Davis Cup captain. There was talk about him playing doubles, and he played so great in that tournament. So I made a comment. We were doing the wrap-up thing. I was down and doing the introductions of him winning, and then we talked to the crowd. And I said, John, man, you look like you could play doubles in Davis Cup. And he yells out, "You're not as dumb as I thought you were." It was perfect, but it just connected. So that's kind of cool to do that. And it was fun to be with him. So, a lot of those folks, they're just great memories of all of it. But the NASCAR, I can just go all around. I mean, I love doing all of it. But did college basketball, and I still do college football, and I may add basketball this year because now I feel like I'm in a position where I can do some of that and maybe do more of that again. And some folks have some interest again in me doing them because I had really scaled back. After I left television, I went to work Owens & Minor, which is a Fortune 300 company here in Richmond. That's where I went. I was director of community relations. But the coolest thing about that is Gil Minor, who was part of the family, obviously the last of the Minors to own the company, is a graduate of St. Christopher's. You guys may not know that, but he's one of the finest human beings I've ever met. I absolutely adore Gil Minor. But to have a chance to work for a true Richmond-based company, that meant a lot to me. It really did. I felt like, wow, I've actually really connected, and it's really home because to connect with that group. And as soon as he found out that VMI wanted me to do some of the games, he chased me down in the hallway and he says, Chip, I understand VMI, he went to VMI too. The baseball stadium's named after him. He said, I understand VMI wants you to do football. I said, yes, sir. He said, you're going to do it, I know. And I went, well, I've been thinking, no, you're going to do it, I know. That's all I needed to hear. And when they won this conference back last March, I was up in the press box, and I didn't know the phone had rang, but Gil had left the stadium because he's so excited they were going to win the conference. And he called and he said, wouldn't have been the same if you wouldn't have been there. I heard the whole thing. And that's the kind of person Gil Minor is. You can run into those folks. I always look for those kind of people because those are the people that want to be a part of what you do. They want to help you. And Gil was just the greatest.
So you mentioned getting back into broadcasting. Are you strictly just commentating with VMI, or do you plan on branching out more?
Well, I've had some folks talk about a lot of different things. VMI, we do the home games, and that's been a lot of fun, but there's some other folks who have just inquired if I could do some other ones and go into college basketball, maybe do the men's and women's games at some of the schools. We'll see where that goes. It's only, April now, so we still got a few more months before we'll decide on those things and see what happens with it. That's part of the fun of it.
Yes, sir. So you have a lot of experience with interviews, sports writing, and sports broadcasting. So what makes a good interview, and what was the best interview you've ever had or been involved with?
I'll give you a funny one. I want to do that first because I think that kind of sums up who I thought television for me was. And this took place, don't get mad at all of you who are not St. Christopher's folks. This is the St. Chris folks I'm worried about. Y'all might get upset. It was a collegiate. It was one of my favorite interviews. Mary Lou Retton was a gymnast. Guys, y'all got to Google some of these people I'm throwing out because you're not going to know who they are. But she was really America's first darling as a gymnast. Little bitty lady, but the biggest heart and the biggest smile you've ever seen. So she's over among what seemed like a sea of young folks. She was doing a clinic. And we got there about 5:15, and she looked up at me when I got there. I told her who I was, and she goes, help me. And I went, Mary Lou Retton wants me to help her. So this was cool. So I said, yes, we'll come get you early. We'll get you out of the, So she walked over and she goes, okay, I've heard that you do cartwheels. And I said, who told you that? She said, I've heard it at the MDA telethon or something. I said, that's correct. She said, are you any good? I said, depends on what your definition of good is. And she said, I'd like to see one. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. At the end of the interview, I'm going to hand the microphone to you. And I'm going to do cartwheels, and you can score me, and all you have to do is throw it back to Lisa Schaffner. That's all you got to do. Back to you, Lisa. So lo and behold, we got to the end, and I said, you mentioned that I could do cartwheels, and you want to know how good they are, so you can score them. So I gave her the mic, pulled out the earpiece, and went into not a great set of cartwheels at that time. I have time, every excuse I can think of, folks. And she goes, oh my gosh, those were 10s. They were perfect, And she throws it back to Lisa like we practiced this for 35 minutes and we hadn't practiced it at all. It was just so cool because of how it all worked out. And I think we got as many calls for that as about anything. The other one that is close to that was when the Virginia State cheerleaders are called the woo-woos. And the woo-woos, they dance, they get after it, and you can't play. If you're going to be a woo-woo, you are serious business. I was a male woo-woo cheerleader about 3 times live during my career. And folks called and just would ask if we would play the video again because I was nowhere even close to staying in touch. But realistically, I'll give you the real story about the sports people. That was the fun stuff that folks liked. I think there were a couple of folks that really hit me. Roger Staubach was one of my favorite interviews. That's another one for y'all to Google. Just an unbelievable class guy. When my grandfather died in 1975, Roger Staubach and the head coach, Tom Landry of the Dallas Cowboys, reached out to us. They were playing my Uncle Fran in the NFC Championship game, and the Vikings got beat, but they called, they sent flowers. So when I actually met Roger Staubach was a big deal. So that obviously won. Gale Sayers was my hero growing up. And when I had a chance to meet and interview Gale Sayers, that was the other one. Gale Sayers was absolutely my hero. He wrote a book called I Am Third. I would encourage y'all to read it. It's not a long book, but it is a wonderful book. Really a wonderful book, and it's not that long. But to meet him, over the top.
So transitioning away from broadcasting, so we've read now that you are on the board of directors for the Special Olympics in Virginia. So why is that so important to you?
I just rolled off a little while ago, but I'd been on it for a long time, and I'm helping them out again this year. They're doing some neat things with their USA games. They're going to get some folks to cut some video for them, and I'm helping them do that. In fact, I had lunch with one of those folks over there, so I still feel like I'm a part of it. You have to roll off after so many years, and I always think it's important to give back. I think there's so many people who don't realize how important it is, not only for you, but for those folks that you're trying to help. And we were very lucky over the years to get some really great people to come in. We had an Olympian come in. We had another Olympic bronze medalist to come in that I was able to secure because they're people that I know. And so that's fun when you see Special Olympics. And the first time I put a medal over one of the Special Olympians, he went into this excited mode that I don't know if I've ever seen the thrill of victory come out of somebody. And he says, Mom, look what I got. And his mom's just tears everywhere, which meant I had tears everywhere. And this guy's just loving it, and he's hugging everybody. And it was a very moving moment for me. It really was. So I have loved being around that group.
So we've all seen you around St. Christopher's as a substitute. So why did you decide to come and be a substitute at St. Chris?
Well, a couple of reasons. As I said, my oldest went to school here, 6th through 12th, and loved it. I loved being around this place. I always have. Dick Kemper, who was the athletic director here forever, I hadn't been here too many years. He said, I'll get at least one of your boys before it's over with. And I always laughed at him. I said, I can't afford it. He said, it doesn't matter, I'll get them. And sure enough, when one came, the first phone call I got was Dick Kemper. But I had always thought in the back of my mind, I love the age you guys are. I love the high school experience. I always have. And to be around you guys who are so much smarter than I was when I was your age. You really are. There's so many more avenues that you can take to learn so much more. We had a book. You had to read the book. There was no real other. You had to go to the library to get a book because there wasn't this book wasn't notebook was no book. But it's just a fun place for me to be. And I had some discussions with Tony Zemandera, who I've known for what seems like forever. And I said, look, I'd love to just come in. And I knew during COVID that you're going to need some help because it's hard to have classrooms with teachers running back and forth. And I've been thrilled that it's where I've had more fun. My wife teases me. She goes, I don't think I've seen you happier. I think you're so happy to be. And I said, have a great time. I love being around you guys. I really do, and that's as honest as I can be with you. You can ask people that